Good evening and welcome to Press Pass. Apologies for the delay, but it is time to look at our main focus, two issues this episode. The first, up ahead.
And now start serving your sentences. Those are the orders of the court.
Well, with the doctors being on strike for at least 70 days, the plot thickens as the officials are now spending their first night behind bars. Also, in the second part of this program, registration of voters set to end tomorrow. Questions abound over the polarizing messaging to the electorate through media. And our first focus will, of course, be on the doctors' strike and the development today. That is the jailing of the 7K MPDU officials who have been jailed in the name of contempt of court. I have in studio my first panel for this issue. That is Dr. Amakove Wala. She is a former chair of the Kenya Medical Association, but as well right now is the regional director for AMREF. Thank you for joining us. At least I hope I got that right. Yes, okay. You can correct me. The whole reason he's here to correct me. The people who directed me to you told me you're the regional director at AMREF.
No.
Yes. What's the right title?
It's regional program manager.
Oh, okay. At least I got it at AMREF. So now you know that she'll be very keen on facts and getting it right. Thank you for that. And next to her is Dr. Lukoye Atwoli, has been a teacher to most of those who are actually now leading the doctors' bodies at KMPDU, has seen them grow to where they are today and gives us some light on, and at least his perspective on what has been going on, the industrial action. And he is the dean at the Moi University Medical School and is an honorary member, at least honorary chair at the Kenya Medical Association. I hope I got that right.
Honorary secretary.
Secretary. Man, I'm getting everything wrong. All right, and last but not least, Vera Okeo. She is the reporter, a science reporter at our health desk here at The Nation. Has written an article, at least has been part of reportage that has been at the receiving end of a lot of flack, and that's what I'm actually looking at right now. The dirty games in the doctors' strike, and at least we'll look at maybe the first two paras, and the Daily Nation is exposing the insincerity, backtracking, and outright arm twisting that have been blamed for the long drawn out doctors' strike that enters its third month this week. And they were calling out the government, calling out the doctors in this particular article, citing 4-page document that had a back-to-work formula, and you reported some insincerity in this. But first, let me get some quick reactions of what has happened today. I'll start with you, Dr. Lukoye.
Yeah, Mark, what has happened today is a disgrace to the credentials of this republic. We have come from far. We've come from the dark days of KANU, where nobody was allowed to speak anything against the government. But what happened today reminds us that freedom is only maintained by eternal vigilance. When the government, first of all, engineers the jailing of doctors whose only crime really is following the law and doing a strike that is legal, and eventually they are jailed because they follow the law. And secondly, when the doctors are, they have a vigil at the Railways Club, then you send military-style policemen with guns and tear gas to peacefully unarmed people just expressing their displeasure with the court ruling. I think we're harking back to the dark days of KANU, where people were shepherded to the courts in Nakuru, if you remember, and in parts of Nairobi to specific magistrates in order to be sentenced in the dark of the night. Okay. I think we must stand vigilant against this, right. And this is what is endangering our democracy as we speak.
Dr. Wale, you were there at the Railways Club earlier, and you had to leave when the troops marched in to get you out of the premises of Railway Club. Just tell us the journey that has been, at least how it has been interpreted. For now, the interpretation of this is they are behind bars. The 7 KMPDU officials are behind bars because of contempt of court. At least that is right in terms of the interpretation of this. But in the journey that you have monitored so far, what have you seen that has been skewed?
To be honest, the conversations that we've been hearing from the other stakeholders, so especially in the mediation process, we've had the government officials coming out and, lying blatantly on national television about the rigidity of the union officials. Yet the conversation that goes on behind the scenes is totally different. And also the fact that even from the media side, some stories that are very skewed towards a certain, one of the narratives, which is doctors are just rigid and they don't want to, take what's on offer. So I think it's time. There's an African proverb that says, until the story is told by the lion, the hunt always glorifies the hunter.
Well,
so this is our time to tell our story.
Okay, we have one of at least colleagues who have been telling this story over the period of this industrial action. And you have cited in this report, at least the team that was on this report cited a back-to-work formula that, and you said, or at least said, there was some form of insincerity coming from the doctors in this process of negotiations. Just clarify on this. At least it came out on the Daily Nation piece.
Okay, first of all, I would like to clarify that reporters found themselves in a very tough spot at this point because from each side, everybody wants you on their side. The doctors want you on their side, the government wants you on their side. But as reporters, before we go to press, before anything that we bring to press, we make due diligence, especially I would say of the Daily Nation, we try to do that. We tried to call people, and the document that is cited there, we did call the officials, and a few of them,
right.
we brought them to the Nation Center and tried to get them to explain it to us, at least tell us what's this all about, that came out. And the debate about the media being skewed on this reporting,
right.
It would not be accurate because by the end of the day, Mark, I cannot decide whether this is good or bad as a reporter. Because if I take the doctor's side at this point, even the doctors would not trust me in future to be able to stand for the truth by the end of the day.
All right.
If I should be accused as a reporter of not defending my action by where are the facts, did you conduct an interview of some sort? So it's been really a very difficult time for reporters, given that health and science reporting is, first of all, at its infancy in Kenya. All that we have been doing is learning and taking from people who we do not have a lot of mentors in this field.
Right.
Yeah.
Is this some form of ineptitude then on the part of media? Because that has been the accusation, at least from some of the doctors, that our understanding of the issues, especially the CBA, the 2013 CBA, has been shallow.
I would say that maybe the media could have done better, but what the reporters gave was our 100%. For someone who practices in the hospital and in public health, maybe that was not, we could have done more. But at that point, that is what reporters had, and they gave it their all. Right. And I would like the public to understand when I was being trolled on Twitter, I saw people saying you're shallow, and some of the attacks were really personal. But even as I said that health and science reporting is at its infancy, before you understand, when I began my job in 2013 as a health reporter, I would not do stuff as I do it right now. It took me conversation with people like Lukoya Toli and Wala, and to go out there and understand, like I would give a case of the way we reported the Alex Madaga case. Reporters did not know how emergency medicine works. They did not know that getting that guy out of the ambulance would actually kill him on the spot. But as a reporter, you feel, as a human being, you feel, oh, you should have made him a little bit comfortable. Right. But with time goes by, we learn and we improve.
Dr. Lukoya, your response to this, I see you taking some notes down.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's important as we discuss these issues to point out inaccuracies. We, as professionals, hold the media to very high standards of accuracy. And the reason is we expect that their job is to listen and analyze and compare, rather than just he said, she said, he said, she said. So the truth of the matter is the report that you have cited in the newspaper had numerous inaccuracies, and I pointed them out. And one of the inaccuracies was that there was a purported return to work agreement, as cited in that article, There wasn't such a thing. The tables that are being bandied about have never been the subject of any return to work agreement I have seen. And I can tell you this, I have been part of this process since the beginning, since December 5th. And one of the things that we agreed from the beginning and that the union leaders made very clear, they're not interested in calculating tables with the government and telling the government how much house allowance one earns. The government should know that. They were interested in certain things in the CBA, among which were improved infrastructure, improved facilities, improved hospitals in general. Because if you improve the working environment of the doctor, then you improve the hospital. And the final bit, which was about the salary, the tables have been blown out of proportion. Right now, all I have heard, because I've been trying to shuttle between the union and the government, all I have heard is, apart from these things that we've asked for in the CBA, the increment that we require is this particular allowance and this basic salary and this job group.
Okay.
So the tables that are being thrown around that now you'll start earning 196, those are strange to the union. They are things that are manufactured by the Ministry of Health and then bandied about as offers. To be honest, they have not been made on the table. Those offers have been made in the media. Those offers have been made in press conferences. They have not been placed on the table as part of resolution of this crisis. Okay. If you remember correctly, on October 6th, Judge Monica Mbaru ruled and instructed the parties to this crisis to go back and address themselves to the CBA of 2013 very clearly and said, go back and address the issues that you didn't agree on in 2013.
Right.
And once you have done so, I would like you to get advice from whoever needs to advise you, including SRC, Labour, and so on. And once that is done, bring that document for registration within 45 days. And that was ignored by the government. And the union gave a 21-day notice. It was ignored by the government. At the moment the union called a strike, everybody was running helter-skelter to the courts to try and declare it unprotected.
Okay.
And this is the reason the strike has persisted. Because you have allowed us to go through the entire legal process up to the point of calling a strike. And once people go on strike, then you come out and start saying, that's an unprotected strike. You have not given dialogue a chance. For 60 days.
Okay.
People have tried to give dialogue a chance and it has failed.
Right.
Yeah.
Dr. Wala, perhaps what you say is skewed is in some instances when a story is brought forward to show the impact of the strike and the death of Kenyans due to the strikes, in some way or another directed to the strike. Is this an unfair way of shaping this story? Or framing it, because it is directly from the industrial action that some people have actually lost their lives?
Yes, I would not call it unfair. I'll just call it one side, I mean a narrow viewpoint, because in the health system there are various stakeholders. There's always the patient, the provider, the payer, and the patient, the provider, the payer, and the regulators. Okay. So when you just bring out the patient story, which are true, then you leave out the rest of the section. Then you actually propagate an inaccuracy, because if you look at the whole picture, like what we are saying as doctors, when you tell us to go back now, as the situation is, we are simply going back to supervise more deaths. And that's why we said in our narrative, what we're doing is we are getting the doctors to share the stories of how they are donating their own blood, how they are driving patients in their own vehicles, transferring them somewhere, how they're having to choose between 3 different patients who's going to get the 1 oxygen cylinder. Patients are dying right now, with or without us. So we need to see that story too, that the public should be able to, in as much as we sympathize with the current situation, that status quo is worse than what it is now.
Right. Yeah. We've told the stories, enough stories. In fact, we've profiled the doctors and the conditions that they've had to persevere as in their line of duty as doctors. So is it quite fair that we haven't told their side of the story in terms of the difficulty they work under?
I will speak for the science desk that I work for. I would not speak for the rest of the media, but we have really tried to, at least at the newspaper, to try and talk about the conditions under which the doctors are working. In 2015, my colleague Eunice Kilonzo and I, and another one called Jacqueline Kubanya, we took 3 months off work and we went to public hospitals, high traffic public hospitals, 23 of them, and we took recordings. We shadowed doctors, how they work, the conditions under which they work. And I feel because some of the contacts I got for that were from the union, that is why they were feeling like the media had betrayed them in a way, because they opened their world to us. And we were there posing as patients to see how they were working. And really some of those things were sad. And we ran a 1 week story after that, and we have continually reported about those conditions as they are showing up.
Right.
What is difficult, Mark, is as a reporter, and I do not have a medical background, I cannot link this death to the strike. It's not possible. What I can just allude to, as we did before, is in Kenyatta, there are this number of patients in a year, and they are not going to the hospital right now. And if you look at the private hospitals around Kenyatta, they are not seeing that fluctuation. So I leave the public to ask themselves, where are those 2,500 patients that go to Kenyatta on a single day go to? So that you can make your own conclusion. They self-medicate, the issue of antimicrobial resistance comes in there, and we've taken that angle as well. They either stay at home and die. You find patients, we have found patients who are not able to seek care at that point, or they go to private health care, the private hospitals, and get stuck there because they cannot pay the bills.
Okay.
So we have tried as reporters.
All right, I just have to take a very quick break here, and then when we come back, to set the record straight on what Kotu has said about the intervention so far, KNCHR said about the intervention so far, and the different levels that we have of the talks in terms of negotiations, and whether this will actually go forward. My director tells me I have to take a quick one, and I'll be back shortly. All right, this is the last lap in our conversation here, so we'll take it really quick, and I'll just get a clarification from the ladies and gentlemen that are on this panel. First, as I asked you in the break, Vera, is this then going to be retracted in terms of from the team that put this story together, saying that there's a 4-page document that you confronted the officials with, and there were some inconsistencies and something that they challenge?
Before a story goes to print, obviously there's a whole
Process that is gone through.
There's a whole process of that. My concern is to do my job as a reporter. I do my job. If it's challenged, and for real, it's really challenged, and you've shown me this is out of it, then it's upon my superiors to do that, to do the retraction. But so far, what I've gotten are how shallow I am, how I should have gone back to school and read, how my head is big. I have not gotten anything. I would like people to come and challenge the story on the inconsistencies they are in.
Okay.
In that story, it's mentioned that a few of the union officials were actually called to Nation Center to come and talk to either me. The debate about whether I authored that story or not does not resurface, because it was published by Healthy Nation, under whose at the bottom of the paper has my name as a reporter on it.
Right.
So I'll still stand by it. So if people feel, if the doctors feel this is really, you went out of line to talk this and you did not make an effort to come talk to us, I would like them to come and challenge me. At first, I was really affected by what was going on online, but then I stood back and I said, because of the trust that the doctors had placed on me for the 3 years that I've been a health reporter. Right. Some of the stories have not been really nice, even to Lukoya Tuli. But I always say, challenge me on the truth. Did I do this interview with you? Right. Did I record this? Did I ask for your permission to do this?
Okay.
And
let's just agree, perhaps. This is a very emotive issue on either side. So if you say something that hits the government, and the government says you're siding with the doctors. If you say something that hits the doctors, then they say you're siding with the...
And that's why, as I said, Mark, even people say we are biased. By the time I make a decision to be a science reporter, I've already made a bias.
Right.
By the time I make a decision to follow a story, I've already made a bias. People are telling me you're an activist. Mm-hmm. By the time I choose to pursue a story and go at it, and I'm saying go at it, not just, 3 phone calls, nothing. Mm-hmm. Go at it. I have already decided I'm going to be an activist in this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's get the facts straight then as to where we are. First of all, your response. I'm sure you want to respond to this.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I'd like to say that we've worked with Vera in the medical sector for the past 3 years, and she's really grown in her skills in science reporting. So it was a surprise to us when the article came out, and we had that discussion also offline. But I think that's water under the bridge. What I'd like to emphasize is that stories about the health sector can make or break the system. So it's not like saying, traffic lights are not working in Nairobi, there's traffic jam. That's not a threat. But if you're bringing in something of public health importance, then it's very, very important to verify facts, especially if you want to run 4 pages of it with figures and diagrams and whatnot. But we said, as a union or as a doctors' fraternity, we are now telling our stories ourselves.
Okay.
So we would want to also mobilize the public in terms of supporting us, because with the media, it's almost like who pays the tune. I mean, who pays the piper plays the tune. So we want to buy space and start releasing this information on our own, with our stories, with our tune that we want it to take.
Okay, real quick, because we're wrapping up. What are the things that you need to clarify in terms of the facts, of what the story as it's been told?
So one of the things is about the process, as it has been said, and I think Professor Lokoy will handle that. What came out so strongly was a story from the government side, and he's already talked about the figures that are not accurate. The other thing that has been shared is about the not touching at all. There were actually 2 court processes in this thing. There was one by Honorable Justice Monica Mbaru, and then there's the one from Honorable Justice Wasilwa. Now, the media is focusing purely on the Wasilwa bit, forgetting that there's another very legal, duly followed process by the court ordered on October, sometime in October. So why isn't that story coming out at all in any of the media stories?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think first of all, of course, to point out that whenever there is an inaccurate health story that touches on me or an area that I'm competent in,
right,
I often make an effort to contact the reporter and correct it. And Vera knows this, as she has been the recipient of relatively harsh words from me,
right,
when I find that she's written stuff that is inaccurate or misleading or potentially harmful. So I do this regularly, and she's my contact person here. And so even this story, I think we have been in touch, and there are points that we have gone through, and I'm happy to constantly engage to try and correct that.
Okay.
Concerning the mediation process, again, all you have heard is from the government side. Let me be frank, because the government side has fed the media with the story about what has gone on in the mediation, and the trick here is that when they went into mediation, the first thing that they all had to sign was an agreement that they will not go out to the media and blurt out whatever is going on in the mediation process. And then the government side goes out and blurts out what's happening in the mediation process. So a total sign of lack of good faith. However, I know what was going on in the mediation process because I've heard it from those who were there. And one of the things is that when they agreed on the parties, the government side kept changing the people who were coming into the mediation process.
Yes.
So there was no consistency. The second thing is that there was a mismatch of information from government representatives within the room and government representatives outside the room. So discussions would be going on in the room. A phone call, somebody would receive a phone call and come back and say, yeah, the ministry says A, B, C, D. And the people representing the ministry in the room would say, no, we don't agree. And so it was a totally disjointed process. The third thing is that the government kept shifting goalposts. After 60 days of talking, when they started the mediation process, they pretended like nothing has happened, and they started from the beginning. And finally, when they came out to report about what happened, they were saying, one side of the mediation process was saying that the doctors were rigid and nothing went on. But we have just seen the chair of the Human Rights Commission saying more than 90% agreement had already been arrived at, despite the fact that they started from the beginning. And to me, what that means is that there was somebody somewhere who did not want the process to be concluded. Okay. Because when the mediation was almost being concluded, they went to court, the judge did not listen to the report of the mediation process, she decided to send them to jail. And the report from the human rights lawyer was that we are almost arriving at agreement. In fact, we have a draft, and if you give us a few more days, we will produce this draft to you and get it registered. But she didn't want to go that way. Why? It demonstrates that there are hidden forces behind this who are interested either in hammering the union leaders until they accept the flawed, whatever the government was offering, right, or They were not interested in an argument at all and wanted to jail these fellows.
So the government has been insincere?
Absolutely.
The doctors have been all through?
Yeah.
The doctors have been all through?
Have been
sincere?
From where I sit, I have been passing messages from the union to the government all through, and the union has had a consistent message right from the beginning.
CBA.
And every time they're told to compromise, they have been telling me, we are willing to compromise on this particular aspect in the CBA. And we have been passing the message to the government.
Because what it looks like is the doctors are playing hardball.
That's the story from the government. And it's because whenever you sit in a room to discuss these things, one of the ground rules is do not talk to the media about what we're doing in here. And then the government goes out there and issues press statements that are explaining what is going on there from their perspective.
Have you sensed this feeling of insincerity as we wrap up?
I would say that there's been insincerity from both sides. But anyway, as a reporter, I do not expect that you're going to be telling me, okay, this is the mistake. It's my job to try and find that out. And we have tried to point that out when it's there. And as I said from the beginning, this is an emotive issue, and as a reporter, you find yourself there in the middle. Each side is screaming and shouting the loudest, and they want you to be on their side. But I would say, even amongst the doctors, even the issue about the 300%, there are some doctors that would quote the 300%, there are some that would not. There are some doctors who are offline, off record, they would tell you, I just want this thing to be over. And as a reporter, you have to be there and say, okay, now we were having that conversation, not for the media. So there has been that juggling of meetings being shut out there, and it's you struggle to try and get that information. And when it comes out, it's jumbled as it is.
The truth is that the media has no access to the mediation process or the negotiation process.
All we do,
they have to listen to the parties when they come out. But inside there, one party has been gagged, and the other party is free to say whatever they want. And so the only narrative that comes out to the media clearly is the narrative from the government. They have to sneak bits and pieces from either participants or people who are outside in order to try and piece together what happened.
But I will say for sure, Mark, that we have tried as reporters. I'm saying the 30%, whichever percentage the doctors will give for our reporting, whatever we give it 100%. And we have tried to, personally, I have tried to read about even the development about health from as early as 94, what were they fighting about, to try and see what is a pattern here, what's going on here.
And in finality, will negotiations continue as the 7 KMPDU officials are in behind bars? Because that's what CS said. They're willing to continue with negotiations.
I can tell you this, speaking now as the Honorary National Secretary of Kenya Medical Association, that the Kenya Medical Association has taken the position that it will be impossible to engage in any meaningful negotiations as long as doctors are behind bars on the same subject.
Until they're released.
Until they're released. And the union has expressed the same opinion, that their leaders are behind bars. So you're not going to have a new set of leaders coming and saying, now we represent the union and we want to negotiate. It's not going to happen.
Actually, the constitution of the union is such that the leaders who have been jailed today are the only ones who can call off the strike.
And what about the vigils that, such like the one you had this evening? Are you going to continue with the same, or will you just be visits?
We are trying our best in the circumstances. Unfortunately, as we had said earlier, we are moving to the dark ages, because there should be freedom of assembly, there should be freedom of speech, which is being curtailed at this point. But we are determined that we will support our leaders every single day until the day they're out, whichever way.
Tomorrow you'll be hearing more about what the doctors of Kenya are planning to do in order to do this. The rest of it is strategic detail. But tomorrow morning, the National Governing Council of KMA, the specialist associations, Kenya Medical Women's Association, everybody, Kenya Dental Association, are going to converge at KMA Center and will issue a statement about our intentions. But none of those intentions will include negotiations while doctors are behind bars. That's out of the question.
We'll end it here and follow the story through tomorrow, I'm sure. Vera and the team from Daily Nation, as well as other reporters from across the country. This is a story that is of keen interest to us. Thank you for the time that you've given us and for the patience. We need to move on to the next issue here, hoping that the rest of the panel hasn't left the premises of Nation. But we will be following the story. Dr. Wala, Dr. Lukoye, and thank you very much, Vera, for your time. We're taking a quick break. We'll be back with more voter registration at the center of the discussion.